Hello everybody, welcome to 401 Sunset, where we bring you to you, Windsor. I'm Sanjay Maru.
And I'm V. Wayne on the second episode of this all-new season of 401 Sunset.
On today's show, we'll be taking a look at the worlds of documentary filmmaking and film photography, along with a profile of University of Windsor professor Michael Stasko.
And then, later in tonight, we have a local band, Cowboys and Cardigans, coming in to play a little song for us.
Now you may notice two new hosts on your screen. That's because, unlike last week and unlike last season, we're going to be having all new hosts for each episode of 401 Sunset.
Speaking of new, Sanjay, there's actually two new professors on campus. One of them, Vincent Manzerolle, sat down with us for a little chat. Take a look.
I really liked the program because I was somebody who was really interested in production. I really like documentary filmmaking in general, and other kind of media production. But as the years wore on in my BA, I really got interested in more theoretical and historical questions. And so by the end of my BA, I was much more interested in continuing to pursue intellectual questions and theoretical questions and wanting to continue that learning process. And so as much as I could have seen myself going into the industry and really enjoying that, there was an opportunity for me to intensify my thinking and develop my thinking further by doing a master's. And really, I think spending time thinking about the long history, the big questions about, again, what are media, what is our relationship to media, how can understanding how media changes over time help us anticipate the future, and and how to talk to students and talk to policymakers and talk to just regular people about media and the significance of media in their lives. For me, that required, or that at least entailed, more academic work, more study, more reading, spending far too many years just reading books and writing. And so I saw myself as being somebody who really wanted to push my thinking further, and then hopefully use that thinking to share with others, again, whether students or in the policy context or other contexts. Honestly, a lot has changed since I graduated from my undergrad degree. So there has been, I think, a real shift in the overall field of communication and media studies towards, I think, a broader definition of what we consider communication and media technologies and devices and so on. And I think the rise of social networking sites, of mobile technologies, of things like artificial intelligence and software and all that kind of stuff has really, I think, expanded the field in terms of the types of questions and the types of subjects that we pursue as part of what would be called communications or media studies. So that's not to say that we don't still study the conventional kind of communication systems and technologies like television, radio, other things, but that those technologies are now integrated into a much broader media environment. So I would say the field has probably expanded to think more about media environments than specific kind of media industries or technologies. Well, so that's a really good question. I mean, part of my pedagogy, my philosophy of teaching is that, especially understanding media and being a forward thinker in terms of where media is going, I think is about thinking about media past, media history, and thinking about the long history of media technologies. And so I really think there is a huge need to return to some of the big original thinkers that thought about media in big historical context. So Harold Innis and McLuhan. I think thinking about the printing press, thinking about the telegraph, and the radio, newspapers, like all of those kind of historical examples, as much as they might seem dated in terms of the contemporary media moment that we're in, will help us understand the structures of media change and the relationship between how media technologies evolve and their impact on the societies in which they're enmeshed. And so I think to really answer the questions of, what is media allowing us to do, what is it doing to us, what is it doing for us, requires a much broader historical understanding. And I think you can only get that by going back and looking at what people thought about previous media technologies.
A special thanks goes to Dr. Vincent Manzerolle.
It's great to hear that the program is heading in the right direction. Now, switching gears, or rather lenses, into the world of film photography.
We got to sit down with Professor Brenda Pelkey and see her take on whether or not film photography is in fact a dying art.
My name's Brenda Pelkey. I'm a professor in SOCA, School of Creative Arts. I teach both photography and some senior 400 level courses. Film photography, well, we call it either conventional photography or analog photography, and it is almost an historic process. Rather than using a digital camera, you're using a camera that operates with film. The students learn how to develop the film and print pictures in the darkroom. You have a camera that looks a lot like a digital SLR, only you use rolls of film in it. The rolls of film are rated with different ISOs. We generally use a 400 ISO, which is like a general purpose, that allows a latitude of exposures with fairly good results. So this is a medium grain film. They have to learn to get their exposures down with a lot more accuracy. The reason being, if they don't, they're wasting a lot of film and they're not going to get good prints. Analog tends to be much less forgiving. We teach the analog photography so that students learn how to do things correctly, and they also learn a little bit about the history of the medium, because I think it's really important that they have some understanding of the way that technological advances affect the way that an image looks, or the way that we learn to see or like to see images. It's a physical process. It's not about sitting in front of a computer to process your images. It's about standing up, moving your body, having to focus, having to think about mechanical things. I like working in the darkroom. There's something very soothing about working with that low level of light, having to actually expose your paper, figure out what you've done, and then, stand there patiently while your paper develops, and you go through the various development steps of developer, stop, bath, fixer, wash, and then you get to see whether or not you've got a good result. I really think that students understand the digital world much better after they've taken a course in analog photography, because digital, of course, is all based on analog. Film photography, it's interesting, it still has a lot of influence on digital. If you spend any amount of time on the internet looking up things like black and white photography, you'll find that there are all kinds of digital resources on how to get a black and white digital image that really resembles a conventional or analog print. A lot of the information that we see even on the back of a camera is all based on film technology. Film photography isn't as available as it used to be, neither in color nor black and white. It used to be readily available. I mean, you could get things processed anywhere. There are fewer and fewer labs that have the facilities to process color photography. In terms of black and white, that's always been difficult to find a commercial lab that will do black and white processing. It's lost favor in terms of its availability, also in the fact that it costs a lot more to do and to practice, and you need more equipment. Well, it's not quite a lost art, but it is certainly a niche market used in fine art circles, but it's rapidly becoming an historic process. There may be a time in the future where it becomes like the colloidal process, like the tintype, like the ambrotype, like the daguerreotype, something that is simply not practiced except for a very narrow niche market.
Sanjay, film photography actually isn't a dying art,
People still take pride in their work.
despite the misconception that they're boring. In fact, that's actually the case with documentary filmmaking as well.
Now, we will be talking to Cowboys and Cardigans in just a few moments, but before we get into that, let's take a brief look at the world of documentary filming.
I like documentaries because they're very educational, but it sounds boring, but no, they teach you something. So when I see a doc, I like to learn from it. So if I can teach someone about something, it's pretty cool. And then it's real emotions. Fiction lasts for the film, and then when it's done, it's done. But documentaries will last forever because it's something that actually happened. Well, what personally got me into documentary filmmaking was a professor at the University of Windsor of the name Tony Lau. I was all about all about fiction, 100%. I hated documentary. I liked watching them, but I was like, I don't know, it's not fun. But then I found out it was actually easier. No offense to anyone, but it is a little easier. It's different, like, it's just different, but it is a little easier. So, yeah, I made one, and it was pretty successful, and then I was like, yo, let's do this again.
A really excellent documentary filmmaker came to teach at my graduate school. His name was Tony Buba, and I got the chance to work with him. And just in seeing the projects he did personal docs, he did kind of historic docs, and I just realized how important it was to tell stories that weren't being told.
Well, I have made a couple. I made one called Jamie, the Olympic Dream, about a decathlete that struggles with being an athlete and making it to the Olympics. Also one in Windsor about poverty and how law kind of sometimes prevents people from escaping poverty.
Documentary has a scope and a depth that can get people to think about their own lives. Like, I kind of think Hollywood is sort of trying to get us to escape from our lives, and most documentaries apply to each of us in some way, even though it's somebody else's story.
I'm really big into cinematography. Like, if you've seen Samsara, something like that, I just want every image, every shot to be like mind-blowing. And then that with the content, it's got to make you like cry or get fired up.
I think a lot of documentaries focus on just the story and kind of lose the picture and the visual aspect, which can be very like influencing.
But like it can be good if it's archival footage. Obviously, you can't change that. But I think if it has both, like anything that's shot later or like in production, I feel like should be on point with cinematography.
It's really about thinking through a story you want to tell. And I've seen really good documentaries that aren't made with really high-end expensive equipment. It's more having the story you want to tell and being able to take the time to really explore it.
It's the story that matters and how you put it together. So I think you just got to keep going, videotape what you want to do.
If you ever find a story that you are passionate about, you find that one, and then you go gun-ho about it, and then it'll turn into something
that's the main
you
thing.
love.
Yeah, like when I filmed the Jamie documentary, I interviewed him, and it was supposed to be a 10-minute doc. I interviewed him for about 6 or 7 minutes. When he was done, I was like, there's no way this is going to be 10 minutes, because there's just so much information. I was like, we got to make this a feature, and we did. So, I mean, you got to be passionate about it, and it'll it's cakewalk after that.
Welcome back to 401 Sunset. Here we have Cowboys and Cardigans.
I'd like to start by getting you guys to introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Devin. I play guitar.
Hi, I'm Jamie, and I play guitar and I sing.
My name's Jordan. I'm the drummer.
I'm Taylor, and I'm the bass player.
All right, awesome. So what can you tell us about the meaning behind Cowboys and Cardigans?
Essentially, Cowboys and Cardigans is a euphemism for astronauts, which is something that has always kind of intrigued me.
Short and sweet, I like it. What can you say about your sound that's very unique?
I'd say we have a broad mixture of what actually makes a rock band a rock band. We have funky stuff, we have light stuff, we have ballady stuff, we have really, really heavy stuff. So it's a very, very unique mixture, and we cover all of our bases really by being who we are.
So have there been any interesting stories as you formed a band, like on stage or off stage or anything like that?
This is just one interesting story. I lost part of my finger 30 seconds before we started to play a show. Played one song and then realized I did some pretty serious damage, and went to the hospital. And they've apparently finished it. We were playing with another band, and I bled over everything. Yeah, there was
exposed bone.
Yeah, it required reconstructive surgery the next morning. A week later, I was back. I had the tip of the finger all wrapped up, and I was playing with these two fingers like that, with it sticking out awkwardly. We had finished recording at that point, but we released Cockatoo, our first album, 2.5 months later. We have Cockatoo, which is our first full length, and Platypus, which was our second EP.
So pretty much we put in an application for the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Fund within Windsor, and we got $3,500 unexpectedly, and we decided to go back into the studio, and we recorded another 7 songs. We applied for money to do 2, and we worked really hard for 6 days and got 7 done instead. So
I assume like you've gotten a lot of coverage in the media and everything like that. And we've actually we checked out the CBC in Windsor Morning News. Actually, that happened a couple months ago. So from then, can you actually explain about that and if you've gotten any other media coverage?
we've been played pretty consistently on 89X since May.
Actually, let me just interrupt you for a second. I just want to ask, what's that feeling like when you first hear your song on the radio?
To hear your own song on the radio, it's really hard to kind of explain because you don't write it for any other reason aside from you thinking it's good. And then you get in with a band and everybody plays their part and you record it and it turns out really well and you're really happy with it and you're satisfied. Anything that happens beyond that point is just what happens. And when I heard it on the radio for the first time, I was just like chills went up my spine.
You feel rather vindicated for all the efforts that you put in and knowing that there's somebody out there, especially somebody in the business that knows what to appreciate in music, actually is appreciating what you were doing. That's a very, you feel vindicated is the best way to put it. You feel very strong about what you've created.
And just to touch on the CBC bit that you mentioned there, they've been incredibly supportive of not just us but a bunch of other local acts in the Windsor region. They had us on first for Local Music Week, which is I believe a yearly segment that they do, and that was the second iteration of it. So they put a lot of coverage in, and they were super friendly with us. We were super happy that they had us along, and we asked them again, like, hey, could we talk about our album coming up? And they were the door is open for us.
And I want to ask about, nowadays the market is so saturated with, it's so much easier now for bands to start up and develop their own music. What makes your sound stand out from other local bands?
Speaking as a guitar player with Devin and we have like a real fascination with a lot of really boutique effects. So we're really searching for sounds that aren't common, and we try to do like maybe off the wall things with those. More unique effects. With the guys, as the rhythm section, they have like a distinct flavor to them, and I think it really complements how we play together. So I don't know, like it's really enjoyable to make music together. We all kind of come from a place where we enjoy the same area or era of songs. So we've never had a lack of ideas, and that's why you asked about the third album or whatever. We're not in the process yet, but we're starting to throw demos around. So we would like to have another third album maybe recorded in the fall. There's no reason to stop. Like when you're doing as much recording as we're doing right now, I think like when a band is hot, you just got to keep going with it, right?
So on that note, you're saying like you're keeping going, and Devin, you mentioned how there's a lot of doors that are being opened for you through like this coverage in the media and everything. What advice would you give to new bands that are kind of like they think their doors are closed for them? What would you tell them?
Just keep at it. Don't let anything discourage you. If you play a show and there's only 10 people there, play the show as if the bar's full. Just don't give up. Keep at it.
The thing about it is that with all of us included, we've all had other projects and everything that led into this, and you develop contacts throughout the way, and it's because that you continue to pour your heart into what you do. You get noticed, and those people come along with you as you start new things. So this what our success has been revolving around is a conglomeration of all of those people that we've gained along the way. Taylor's been in a bunch of bands. He's a good session bass player to be able to jump in, so he gets that. Jamie's been around for quite a while. I've worked with Devin for a long time now, and we have gained because of it.
You guys seem very tight-knit. I'm very excited to hear you guys play. Coming up next, 401 Sunset continues with Cowboys and Cardigans, our musical guest, up next.
Well, I actually started at the University of Windsor in 1999. I was in biochemistry. There was kind of, I think there's still a bit of a stigma where, I don't know if it's a stigma, but they say if you're doing well in school and you're getting 90s and 80s, you need to go into the sciences and go be a doctor or something. And so yeah, I was into the biochemistry, and I got to take one elective my first year, and I took what it was called at the time was Introduction Planning and Design, which was like one film class, and loved it, and kind of realized that I wanted to make film my main job and maybe do surgery on the side as like a hobby or something in the garage or whatever. But I also, even beforehand, really wanted to be a professor was my main goal. I didn't know of what, I just kind of liked the idea of that lifestyle. Where you get to work in the academia and then kind of do your research in the summer. So yeah, did my undergrad at Windsor, went on to Sheridan to do a post-grad advanced television film, and did kind of cinematography and producing there. And then after that I went on to Columbia University to do an MFA, knowing that I wanted to eventually go back into teaching. And I thought by going to Columbia, getting that degree, the terminal degree was a good idea. All the while, at each school, I was always like a TA or a GA, kind of picking up classes and kind of building up my resume that way. Yeah, the last 5 years I've been teaching at the University of Ottawa, with a little bit at Ryerson and Western as well. But yeah, when I got the opportunity to come down to Windsor full-time in January, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I was lucky to get through the interview, and well, maybe it was my hard work that set me up for it, but no, I was very fortunate because this is my hometown, and it was a great opportunity to come back and be close to family and friends. But also, like the films that I've made, 2 of them we've actually shot in Windsor, and it's just a great location to shoot. You get the city really opens up to you because it's an exciting experience for them down here. I mean, it's exciting for me, but if I were to shoot in Toronto, it costs $5,000 for them to rent out a cafe to shoot a little coffee scene. Where you shoot something down in Windsor, not only do they open the doors for you for free, they'll even give you some coffee, give you free parking, and that kind of stuff. So I'm in a great situation, and it's a great match right now. Yeah, my first film was Things to Do. We shot that in 2005 in Windsor, and that led on to Iodine, the second film. We shot that up in the Parry Sound region. And then the third film we shot was called The Birder. We shot that in Windsor as well in 2012. And that was a great experience. We actually had students from the University of Windsor out on that set. So I was already recruiting Windsor students before I was even officially working here. But yeah, the next film I'm going to shoot this summer, I'm already setting up some internships to get some students on board. And I think that's kind of important, the way that education is shifting right now, especially in something like digital media production. You really need that experiential component to it, where students can get a chance to get hands-on experience. And they'll take a lot more ownership over the knowledge that we're distilling in class. If we can say, okay, now we're going to show a real-world application, or you're going to go do a real-world application of it. I mean, already just that I can show in my classes some films that I didn't, show some mistakes and some successes that I had along the way, is great. But to have the students come out and then actually practice, not even practice, but do something real is very exciting and valuable for them, I feel.
Thank you to Professor Mike Stasko for that. You know, his fame has definitely increased with the release of the locally shot feature film The Birder, which featured top Hollywood actors Tom Cavanaugh and Fred Willard. And now, over to V, who's with our musical guest.
Everybody, Cowboys and Cardigans.
The other night, gotta tell you about the guy. Didn't have a drummer, didn't need a band. Tore up his clothes to knock the man. Started out singing about Motown while we got stoned. Yeah, you hear that sound, you turn around and doing shots of mystery mouth. They're gonna blow your fucking mind out. Break dancing out all night at the disco. Give me San Francisco, let's get on. Sweet, sweet doo-wop, yeah, yeah. Sweet, sweet doo-wop, yes, ma'am. Sweet, sweet doo-wop, yeah, yeah. Sweet, sweet. And then the very next night, like he was working overtime, the guy was back in the danger zone with cheap nipples and a microphone. Started out singing about more time. Well, we got stoned, yeah, we got stoned. Yeah, he had the sound, makes it hip shake and dip around. Your tight back is broken down, you gotta let your inner quick. They can't see